Hey, what's happening, everybody? Brent Axe here from syracuse.com, and we're live. And we're live following a Syracuse. This was not just a win. This was pure and simple domination over Florida State. Don't pinch yourself. You're not dreaming. This is not an upset, kids. Syracuse dominates Florida State on this day. Final score at the Carrier Dome, 30-7. Great to be with you back here on the syracuse.com Syracuse Orange Football Facebook page. It's great to be here, presented by our friends at Krause Health. It's great to be talking about Syracuse at 3-0. That's the first time under Dino Babers that Syracuse is 3-0. And the Orange get Connecticut next week at the Carrier Dome. That is the opportunity for Syracuse to go 4-0 for the first time since 1991. 1991 was Paul Pasqualone's first year as head coach at Syracuse. It tells you how long it's been since the Orange have been 4-0. And frankly, if they can win next week, and Connecticut really struggled today in a shootout with an FCS team. Connecticut's awful this season, and by all measures, Syracuse should win that game next week. But, you know, football's weird. Things happen. But, look, Syracuse should absolutely win that game next week. Maybe even this week they get some AP top 25 votes. They go 4-0. They might find themselves in the AP poll next week. That's how quickly things can happen in the college football world. So what do you say we break this one down? You guys get in the comments over there. Tell me what you're thinking about this win today for Syracuse. And I got to tell you, my first thought is this is not an upset. I'm glad to see there was not rushing the field. You did not treat this game like even last year when Syracuse beat Clemson. And look, that's certainly notable that you have Syracuse beating Virginia Tech, a ranked team, in 2016, Syracuse beating Clemson in 2017, of course, last year, the number 2 team in the country. But the difference being in those 2 years, Syracuse went 4-8. Their defense fell apart at the end of those seasons. And those wins, while notable, while showing that a program was building and coming up, you didn't really cash it in as much as you should. The question is if Syracuse can do that in this win against Florida State. This feels different. It's not an upset, but it feels like Syracuse truly took a step forward here. Let's be honest, Florida State's an awful football team this year, and that sounds really weird coming out of my mouth, but it's true. Their offensive line is awful. DeAndre Francois was running for his life all day. And look, you guys have been hard on Brian Ward, Syracuse's defensive coordinator, on this program, on my radio program, in various formats, and deservedly so at times. As I mentioned, you know, that defense was awful the last 4 or 5 games of the past couple of seasons. But you know what? You got to give credit where it's due, and Brian Ward had that defense dialed up today. Alton Robinson, Chris Slayton, Kendall Coleman. Officially, Syracuse had 3 sacks in this game. But boy, DeAndre Francois got beat up in this football game. The pass rush was terrific. The secondary was terrific. Kylan Whitner had 11 tackles. The linebackers doing their job as well. So the defense really stepped up here. Seeing you guys coming on board here, getting the comments. We'll keep commenting on the game, and I'll hop in there and respond to you guys here momentarily. Should note, some of you just watched Dino Babers here, but in case you didn't. So the update on Eric Dungey is this. According to Dino Babers, Dungey got poked in the eye during the game and had blurred vision, and that's why they held him out in the second half. I don't know if he officially went through concussion protocol. I would imagine that he did, considering that there was a hit that surprisingly was not called for targeting. Right at the end of the first half, helmet-on-helmet hit from Florida State. I believe Cyrus Ward was the player that hit him. And you say to yourself, okay, you got to be cautious about this. Dungey's gone through this before. They take him out. But according to Dino, it was blurred vision as the result of a poke in the eye. And I do recall that from the ESPN broadcast. Dungey came over to the sideline, was talking to Dino, and you could see him really blink in his eye, and they were speculating that maybe some of the rubber pellets that are in the Carrier Dome turf got in his eye. But one way or the other, Tommy DeVito came in and really led this offense to the spark that they needed. Frankly, the offense was kind of stuck in the mud a little bit in the first half. I think Dino Babers, you know, by all accounts, Syracuse had a great game, but some of the play calling in the first half was questionable, considering Syracuse was trying to play power football. And that's not a team that plays power football. We know what the Syracuse offense is. But Tommy DeVito comes in. I'll give you the stats here while we're yakking about it. And leads Syracuse on a 11 of 16 performance. He had 144 yards. He threw for a touchdown. He rushed for a touchdown. Eric Dungey finished the game 7 of 15 for 75 yards. He was sacked once, but hit a bunch in this game, including, I mentioned, the helmet-on-helmet hit after he got rid of the football. There, Jamal Custis led Syracuse 4 catches, 56 yards. Ravion Pierce, 3 catches for 34 yards and a touchdown. He was really mixing it up with the Florida State sideline today as well. Some balance on the Syracuse receiving end as well. You had, just kind of looking quickly here, so you had 7 different receivers catch the football, most of them receivers, so some good balance on that front. How about Jarvian Howard coming in and getting the long rush of the game, a 45-yard run that set up a score for Syracuse? Dante Strickland had 36 yards and a touchdown in this game, and I mentioned that I wasn't too thrilled with some of the goal line calls, but Mo Neal had 75 yards overall and 19 rushes today. Really, the stats come from the defensive end. We mentioned Kylan Whitner had 11 tackles in this game, Kendall Coleman with 2 sacks, Kingsley Jonathan with a sack, Alton Robinson only a sack, but the hurries and the pressure and the amount of times that Chris Slayton was in the backfield, I should say, as well, incredible. The defense really did its job today, and Tommy DeVito came in, and Dino Babers just said it at his press conference, and played the way he's practiced. And look, we questioned it here a little bit after maybe Tommy came in a little too early in the Western Michigan game, and then it was strange because last week against Wagner, Tommy DeVito only played 2 series. They kept Dungy in longer to kind of establish more of a rhythm with those wide receivers. But here's the thing. Tommy DeVito got a lot of reps in practice in both spring ball and in training camp with the ones. And something Dino said in his press conference just moments ago was pretty interesting, that he finally played like he's been practicing. And they've been giving him reps in practice for this scenario. It's unfortunate that you have to do that because Dungy is the guy that, when he's on his game, is the best quarterback on this football team. But Tommy DeVito came in today and held down the fort. I already see a couple of you in the comments saying to stay with DeVito. I don't think they're going to do that. I think as long as Eric Dungy's healthy, he's going to play. But certainly there were times when Dungy struggled today. Florida State held him in check. When you play a team with a little more speed on defense, Brian Burns, who, he was cramping up a little bit, had a hamstring issue, it looked like. But Burns in that defense was getting to Dungy, hitting him a little bit. But look, Syracuse has depth now. They have depth at quarterback. They have depth at other positions. They can overcome some of these injuries and issues when they happen. I don't think you make the switch to Tommy DeVito unless you absolutely have to. And I don't know if you're at that point right now. Now that we know that Dungy had blurred vision and was held out of the game for that reason, he'll get every opportunity to maintain his status as the quarterback of this team. And I agree with that. I think he should be given that status. But you've got DeVito ready to step in and have a great performance like he did today. That throw to the corner of the end zone that he made to Jamal Custis, that is a great throw. That's a freshman. That's a redshirt freshman throwing that thing on the money. And that's what you should have been doing with a guy like Jamal Custis when you were on the goal line. So that's why I was glad to see there was a little play action to Ravion Pierce, a little bit more throwing the ball with DeVito, or with Dungy, you feel like he can run the football in those situations and, use his mobility to his advantage there. But look, one way or the other, this is a big win for Syracuse by optics. It was interesting watching Syracuse be mentioned on College Game Day. And there was a segment that came up, not the official pick segment where Lee Corso puts on the headgear, but kind of right before that, they do a live shot at the Dome because Syracuse had this stage. This was a huge stage. You're the game after College Game Day on ESPN. A lot of people that are just like, hey, I'm going to watch college football today, but maybe my team's not playing until later in the afternoon or whatever the case may be. You're on at every sports bar in the country. You're on ESPN on a college football Saturday. So you want to have a good showing. Frankly, the first half of this game was dreadful. It was a dreadful game in terms of pace. The refs kept stepping in. Florida State, by the way, Willie Taggart, a couple of weeks ago, blaming Virginia Tech for faking injuries. Are you sure you weren't doing that today with all those cramping issues that were coming up? Now, it was oppressively hot in the Dome. There were legit cramping issues happening. It just seemed like a lot more on the Florida State sideline. And they come from Tallahassee. The heat in the Dome is different as opposed to being outside in Florida. I understand that. It's a real – if you were at the game, if you've been in the Dome when it's hot, you know what it's like. The air doesn't circulate. It's awful. But, man, for Willie Taggart to call out Virginia Tech 2 weeks ago and all these guys that came up with injuries and they're back out there the next play, what a joke that guy is. I think Florida State fans are pretty upset with the choice of Willie Taggart. I saw even Pete Thamel, a great college football writer, tweet that it will cost Florida State $21 million if they choose to fire Willie Taggart. That was the first touchdown they had against not only an ACC, but an FBS opponent this year. Florida State has, let me pull up the stat for you that I saw. Here it is right here. Florida State will fall to 4-8 in its last 12 games against Power 5 opponents. What is happening in Tallahassee? You know what? Syracuse fans don't care because they went out there today, took care of business, beat a name brand program. It's not an upset, but it's still a statement win, and it shows that Syracuse took a step forward today. Now, here's the question. Can they go 4-0? Can they either get votes or get in the AP top 25? Can they take care of business? At some point, you're looking good with 3 wins in the bank already. Get that 6th win, get into a bowl game, finish over 500, and who knows what the rest of the season may bring for Syracuse. You're not going to beat Clemson in week 5. I don't think Syracuse could pull that off this year. The circumstances were perfect to do it a year ago. I think they could be more competitive than you would think against Clemson, but I don't think you beat that team. I think Notre Dame is certainly a winnable game for Syracuse late in the year without projecting injuries and things that can happen in November. But that's at Yankee Stadium. You know, Boston College is going to be a tougher win than you usually would think they are with A.J. Dillon. But, again, they've got to stay healthy, and we'll see what they're like at the end of the year. You get North Carolina State. You get North Carolina at the Carrier Dome next month. Both games Syracuse certainly can win. NC State's got a great quarterback in Ryan Finley, and, you know, it's been a consistent program in recent years. But, you know, Syracuse is showing that they're progressing a little bit. They have to keep it up. They have to keep improving. The defense has to show that they can do it all year. But 2016, you beat Virginia Tech. 2017, you beat Clemson. 2018, you beat Florida State. Another Dino Baber speech is going to go viral today. I watched it. I'm sure some of you did before we get on here a little bit. And all good things for Syracuse today. All right, what do you say we hop in there, see what you guys are saying as we chat along here in the comments? Joe saying, just put Dungy on ice. It's time to move on. You can't count on Dungy. They can't coach the risk out of him. You know what I'm disappointed with in Dungy? Look, Eric, we get it. You're tough. There was plays where he's going into people with his shoulder. He's leaning in, trying to prove that, you know, he can take on a tackler. You got to slide, man. You played baseball. You got to slide. You got to play it safe. You've got an injury history. You're the starting quarterback. You're one of the leaders of this football team. We get it. You're tough. Now be smart as a quarterback. It's not time to switch to DeVito, though. It's not. It's not time to flip that switch. I think, you know, Eric Dungy should be given every opportunity to continue to run this football team because he still puts up a lot of points. He still moves that offense, and these guys believe in him. Here's the thing, though. These guys know they got a quarterback that can step in when Dungy is hurt and can do it. I don't think you're going to get a situation where a locker room gets split or anything. I think they know they've got 2 of a good thing. And I understand that sometimes 2 quarterbacks is no quarterbacks, right, in football, but it's not time to make that switch quite yet. Some of you were saying that, though, and look, you can make the case because DeVito looks good. He came in, we gave you the stats, looks solid. That throw to Custis, he clearly is the better arm than Eric Dungy overall. My fear is, you know, sometimes backup quarterbacks come in, adrenaline's flowing, you don't have time to think. Not that Connecticut would put a game plan together to stop DeVito next week. You're really going to find out, though, what Tommy DeVito's made of when you play Clemson in week 5. That's what you got to think about, guys. Clemson has the best defensive line I have ever seen in my life on a college football team. And I'm not exaggerating to say that. You really want to put DeVito up against that defense in a couple of weeks? I think you're better off with Dungy in that case because of his mobility, because of his experience. He beat that Clemson defense a year ago. Let's not rush Tommy DeVito out there quite yet, knowing that a defense like that is coming. But listen, these are good problems to have when you know you've got a solid backup quarterback to come in. But the future, no matter what we say, no matter when he plays, is bright under Tommy DeVito when it is fully his team next year. Phil saying, need more talk about Howard. Outstanding to have a running game. I love Howard. I misspoke last week here. So Howard is from Mississippi. He went to the same high school in Mississippi as Walter Payton. I made a mistake and said it was in Chicago. I was thinking about Payton's time with the Bears. But Howard had that huge 45-yard run. You add him to Mo Neal. You add him to Dante Strickland. This team can run the football. Now, they couldn't run the football on the goal line. They tried several times on a couple different possessions, right up the gut a few times, and they couldn't get the push on Florida State that they have. But we're talking about open field running. We're talking about kind of, in between the 20s. These guys can run the ball. I think, despite some challenges they had against Florida State, that there are some things you can do on the goal line. You just got to mix it up a little bit. You got to run a sweep a little bit. You got to run different plays. Let them go over the top a little bit. But Howard is one of the – I heard a lot of great things about this kid in training camp. He was really garnering a huge buzz. I was looking forward to seeing him against Wagner. He came in against the Wagner game, looked great, but you got to look good against name-brand opponents, and he did that today. So, Phil, I could not agree with you more. That kid's only going to get more playing time as we go. Just has the look, has the feel, and, I mean, look at the upside that he has. He just looks like a college football player. It kind of reminds me of Melvin Gordon when he was at Wisconsin. Just kind of has that look of a college football running back. So nothing but great things to come on that one. Wayne says, just saying, give DeVito the reps in a live game next week, rest Dungy. Well, DeVito's gotten plenty of reps. That's the thing. He played, a lot against Western Michigan, Wagner, this game. DeVito's getting reps. There's no question about it. But, Wayne, where you bring up a good point is, so what is the blurred vision from? Is it just something got poked in the eye? Everybody gets poked in the eye once in a while, and, 10 minutes later, you're looking good. Dungy wasn't even on the sideline for the second half. They were evaluating him. Certainly they wanted to be overly cautious with that. There have been injuries that have been ended by poked eyes. Remember Orlando Brown, played for the Cleveland Browns, got hit in that eye with a flag from a referee of all things, ended his career. Now, I'm not saying that's the case with Dungy. I don't know. But if he can't see, if he's not healthy, if a concussion ensues, you don't know about concussions right away sometimes from that helmet-to-helmet hit. You've got to be cautious about putting Dungy in. What I'm saying is if he gets cleared and he's healthy, he's quarterback of this team right now. I don't think you make that switch at this point. Barry loving it, saying a good game out there. It wasn't for the first half, honestly, but it turned into a good game in the second half. I don't know how many of you are watching that were at the Dome today, but, man, shout out to you guys because it was a sweat box in that Carrier Dome today. The old joke of a building named after an air conditioning company without any air conditioning really applied today. The fans that went there and stuck it out because not only was it hot, the game dragged at times. Syracuse games typically take a little longer because of the offense they run and how much the clock stops. But like I said, the refs were stepping in. Florida State's faking cramps at times. Delays that were unnecessary from the officiating. It was really frustrating. That first half took forever, and I can't imagine sitting there 88 degrees in the Dome, sweating your tuchus off, and that stale, unmovable air. It's oppressively hot in there. And think how it was for the players out there. You're just sitting there eating your nachos, right? But props to you for sticking it out. Official attendance was about 37,000 today, and I was texting a friend of mine who works at the Dome during the game. He said people were leaving. He said, we're glad they're winning. We're glad they're doing well. I just can't take this. It's just too hot. So those Dome renovations cannot happen fast enough for a lot of people. But that being said, now that Syracuse is 3-0 with a chance to go 4-0, they host Connecticut next week. By the way, I looked ahead to the forecast. It's only going to be about in the low 60s next Saturday, so that won't be the case in terms of the heat in the Dome next week. Let's be honest, this is a fair weather town. There's a lot of fair weather fans that only jump on board when things are going well. The perception is they're going well, so maybe they get a little bit of a bump attendance-wise next week. Charlie asking what the actual attendance was. It was 37,000, and I don't know the official number right offhand here. I'll see if I can find it while we're yakking about here, Charlie, but it was just over 37,000 people, and that's a legit number. Syracuse, doesn't inflate those numbers anymore. That number is an accurate turnstile count. Maybe they inflate it a tad, but they don't go with the 43,000 tickets sold, but there's only 24,000 in attendance. That's a legit number that they put out there these days. And based on what I did during the week, if some of you that follow me on Twitter know that I for home games put out a lot of ticket sales updates, the ticket map. You can clearly see how many tickets are gone and not. 37,000 sounds about right. It looks right on board with what the map was. And, they got to see Syracuse dominate Florida State today. Something that, a lot of people probably didn't think they would see, but they absolutely did. Richard saying, Brent, I love it. Our defense was incredible. They were. They stepped up. Look, when you got a wounded animal on the football field, you got to take advantage of them. You got to step on their neck, and that's what the Orange did. And that defense has been under a lot of scrutiny, fairly, by the way, the last 2 years because they've fallen apart the last 2 years. There's been some injuries. There's been some legit things that we have to point out here. But, when you beat Clemson last year and you're 2 wins away from a bowl game and you don't win the rest of the season, you put that right on the defense. You also put it on the fact you play guys like Lamar Jackson for Louisville and some really good players. But who is the kid from Wake Forest? John Wolford comes in and sets all kinds of Carrier Dome records. I mean, that kid's good. But it was embarrassing to see the points and the yards that the defense led up at the end of last season. They need this. They need this boost of confidence. They can rush the passer. They can get turnovers. The turnover rate is much higher this year for Syracuse. They already have 7 interceptions on the season. They've got to feel like they can do this, and those young linebackers have to settle in. The pressure up front's been great all season. Slayton's an NFL player. Alton Robinson, I think, is developing into an NFL caliber talent. Kendall Coleman's been terrific. And the secondary, I think, has stepped up. Andre Sisco had 3 interceptions in the first 2 games. Christopher Frederick, I want to check on him, too, because he got hurt. Looked like he had a bit of a wrist injury, but he made a great interception on Francois today. Take advantage of the situations when they come, and that's what Syracuse did on the defensive end today. No question about it. Brian saying I was legit sweating in that game. Didn't take much to sweat at that one. You just had to sit there for 5 minutes, and it's a good thing they stocked up on the bottled water and the adult beverages at the Carrier Dome today. Tom asked a good question. I'm glad you brought this up, Tom. Is Florida State that bad, or is Syracuse that good? I'm going to be honest with you. I think it's more Florida State's that bad. Is Syracuse 30-7 good? They can be when they execute. Dino made the comment in his press conference that this was the most complete win of the 3 upsets that Syracuse has pulled: Virginia Tech, Clemson, and this one today. And I think I agree with that. I think he's not giving himself enough credit for the way they shut down Virginia Tech a couple of years ago. That was a team that was averaging 40 points a game, and Syracuse held them to 17. Great performance out of Eric Dungy that day. They were pretty much well in hand. But what he means is all 3 phases of the game and the dominance there. But if you're asking me to choose between the 2, Florida State's that bad, which stuns me, because Florida State gets 4 and 5 recruits every year. But it just goes to show you it's more – recruiting's recruiting, and recruiting's important, and I know that, okay? But they've got a ton of athletes there. But you know what they don't have? Cohesion, chemistry. Somebody tweeted – it was Stuart Mandel who tweeted it. One of the great college football writers out there today said, does Florida State even practice? You could tell that's not a team on the same page. They don't like each other. They're questioning what their coach is doing. Chemistry is a huge part of this. So, and I said this for 2 weeks leading into this game. I felt that a huge advantage that Syracuse had was that they're on the same page. They know what they're running, how they're running it, and they're going to go out there and attack. They're not thinking on the football field. Florida State is a mess, and they've got 4 and 5 star athletes up and down that roster, but they are not even on the same – I don't even want to say the same page. They're not even on the same little 3x5 card at this point. It's incredible to see. But I'm trying not to disrespect what Syracuse did today, because you have to go out there, you have to execute, and you have to make adjustments, as they did in this game. Because the first half, Syracuse should have won into halftime easily up 24-0, but they just couldn't get in the end zone. There was a missed field goal. They were stuck in the mud. Tommy DeVito was the spark that they needed, a necessary spark given Dungy's injury, and Syracuse came out on top. But there was a while there where this could turn into one of those games where all Florida State needed was like 1 or 2 capable, competent offensive drives, and they could have won like a 13-7 stinker. But that didn't happen, as we saw, and Syracuse got the win. Wayne noting it was the most complete game that Syracuse's defense has played since Babers came on board, and special teams is everything this year, and I agree with that. Everybody impressed with Tommy DeVito as I was, and that's a good feeling to know that Syracuse has a capable backup quarterback. Michael Antonio saying that the running game helped Tommy today. 226 rushing yards. Here, I'll pull up the official numbers while we're yakking about it here. So on the ground today, Syracuse had – I'll go over some numbers because they're staggering to look at. 25 first downs to Florida State's 11. 222 rushing yards to Florida State's 62. Let's see. Total plays, Syracuse ran 88 plays for 441 yards. They're averaging 84 a game, so more than their average. Florida State only ran 60 plays in this game. They went 3 and out, I want to say 9 times in this game. Kind of reminds me of Ferris Bueller, right? 9 times. It could have been 10. It was a lot for Florida State. So they only ran 60 plays for 240 yards and penalties. A lot of penalties in this game. Florida State had 11 penalties. Syracuse had 8, a little bit too much in that department. How about this, too? Third down. Florida State 1 of 14 on third down. Syracuse 8 of 18 on third down. Staggering numbers to look at when you look at the team that's on the box score, but don't let past performance be an indicator here. Don't let, history be a judge. On this day, here today, Syracuse was the better team. This was not an upset. It was a solid step forward for the program win for the Orange. But maybe as Dino said at his press conference, let's not get too excited here. You're just 1-0 in the ACC, and there's more work to do. But I'll tell you what, Cuse, it's the first time since Syracuse beat Florida State since 1966. You guys go out there and enjoy it this weekend. Make sure you check out my recap tomorrow morning on syracuse.com. All of our great coverage from Nate Mink, Stephen Bailey, and the crew that were at the Carrier Dome today covering this. A little plug that Nate Mink and I, presented by our friends at Krause Health as well, are doing a program called Orange Weekly. It's a video that comes out on Thursdays during the season, so look for it on syracuse.com. We put it on our YouTube channel. I would encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel to find that. If you follow me on social media, if you follow this Facebook page, it comes out there as well. So that comes out on Thursdays. Hope you can check that out. And hope you can check us out right back here next week after Syracuse takes on Connecticut. Will they be 4-0 is the big question. For now, Syracuse beats Florida State 30-7. Enjoy this one, Orange fans. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thanks for hanging out with us here on Facebook Live, courtesy of our friends at Krause Health. We'll talk to you again next week.